Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another Great Money Monday. I'm Rosalind Brown of Your Wealth Guidance, where we help Black women create their financial independence map and identify the tools for success so you can live life on your own terms. Today, we have Victor Clark of YouTube channel My Finance Dad. He's going to tell us a little bit about his journey to financial independence and some great tips that he has passed along or learned over the years. So, without further ado, Mr. Clark, share us your story and how you got started.
Okay, thank you for having me. My story is pretty much like a lot of young Black people. I come from a small town, James City, right outside of New Bern, North Carolina. We had lots and lots of love, but we had little money. When they talked about finance in my family, they would send the kids outside. I think that happens in a lot of Black families. Uh, and they would call us back in when they had decided about the finances. We was very poor, and I didn't know that we was poor until I was in high school, about 15 to 16 years old. And this young lady came up to me, and we was talking, and she told me, "You are really poor." And I stepped back, and I didn't understand it. I knew that my clothes has uh, holes in it, and I wore shoes, the same shoes every day. But I didn't realize how poor we were until I got much older. Uh, I was raised. We got up in the summer and we went out to the tobacco field, and we picked tobacco all day long in the summer until the sun went down. It's funny now. And then we went home and we gave the money to our aunts, and our aunts, took a little bit and gave the rest to us to do with what we want. But nobody understood finance, and so that motivated me a lot to start talking to my kids about finance. We didn't talk at all about finances in my family, but with my kids at the dinner table, that's all we talked about. We talked about money and buying houses, buying cars, and things of that nature. How to build wealth. So that's pretty much my story.
Now, because definitely not coming from money, that's always a benefit. If you come from money, it's easy to get information. Where do you think that you picked up maybe the most valuable pieces of information on your journey?
I think my first incident of money management came from a lieutenant when I was stationed at Fort Irwin, California. Uh, he said something to me, and I rarely tell this story because I don't like the word that he used. He called me a slave, and it really bothered me. And the first time he said it, I let it go, and then the next time he said it, I stopped him. I was ready to fight. My fist was ball. My fist was balled, and he told me. He said, "Look, you take everything that they give you for being in the service." He said, "You get up when they tell you to get up. You go where they tell you to go. You sleep where they tell you to sleep." And he said, "Then you take all the money that they give you and you give it away to someone else." He said, "That's the definition of slavery." And I was blown away. I was actually blown away by that comment.
I think it's so many people probably that are doing the exact same thing and they don't necessarily even think about it. Now, you started your career in the military. How did that help you for your overall journey to having financial independence?
Well, in the military, it's very funny. You would think that United States government would take care of their soldiers, all their soldiers. But when I was a young soldier, I had one child, and we were stationed at Fort Knox, and we would barely make it. There was more days than we had money, more days in a month than we had money. It was scary. I didn't understand why I couldn't make it to the end of the month and pay my bills until I start understanding that I had to manage my money. If you're gonna get by, you're gonna do well. You're not gonna get called into the first sergeant office. You have to manage your money. You have to pay your bills. and feed your family at the same time.
Now, because going from that, so understanding just kind of the budgeting piece, you did more than just collect your check from the military. What are some of the other things that you did to build wealth?
Well, the good thing is I understood that I had to do something extra. The money that they were giving me in the military wasn't enough. I started a small business, and on Saturday and Sunday, I used to get up and go wash people cars. I started a company called Gloss, and I would go there and I would shine the cars up, and they would pay me 25, sometimes $35, and I would take that money and I would help to make ends meet. And then this young lady, this lady that I was washing her car, she said to me again, "What are you gonna do with the extra money that you're making?" And one day I said, "I'm gonna save it." And from there, I started saving everything extra that I made from washing cars.
Now that's a big concept of just kind of, people always talk about, especially nowadays, the big thing is to have your side hustle. And so then to do what with your side hustle money, I mean, some people are needing it to get by. Nothing wrong with that. Definitely a better situation to be in than some others. But then when you looked at that savings and as your savings started to grow, are there some additional things that you did kind of, you start to put it under your mattress and then you take it from the mattress to the bank and then and then what?
Well, one of the things that I realized is that you have to safeguard your savings because there always going to be some reason that you want to spend your savings or some reason that you got to take care of, some emergency that you have to take care of. But that savings is for the future. I really believe that. And you have to understand what you are investing in when you use your savings. And I tell people that if you don't understand something, don't invest in it. Don't take your savings and give to another person that don't understand the business that they're getting into because basically you're just throwing your savings away. That investment almost have to be just like you treat your child. It's that important because you want that child to grow and you want to see that investment grow. That's why that first dollar, that first 10% that you get is so important because it motivates you to do more. It motivates you to save more.
Now, I think you made a really good point about kind of understanding. And I know oftentimes the ladies will say, I have an extra X number of dollars. What should I do with it? And so they're really just looking for the quick answer, but not really an understanding. What are some of the things that you invested in? And then how did you get the information to feel comfortable of making those investments?
I went to the library. I went online. I start studying. I start looking at things. And the most important thing I did was I started investing in stuff that I liked, that I understood. I like Walmart. Okay. I'm one of these people that I love going to Walmart. Therefore, I invest my money in Walmart. I sat down, I understood Walmart's model, I understood how they made their money, and it was a no-brainer. Take your money and put it in Walmart. Walmart was one of my first investments.
Now, that's a big one because, of course, people always say invest what you know. So if you're hanging out at the Walmart, you definitely, definitely know Walmart. And now I know you did a little bit in terms of real estate as well. Tell us how you started to go from the pivot of just the individual savings and some of the individual stocks to do a pivot to real estate.
Real estate was one of my first dreams. My aunt in New Bern, she bought a house. And as a child, I was probably about 12 years old when she bought that house. I was like amazed that someone could buy a house in our family. And I said, one day I'm going to own a house. So I went to the bank. I got so excited when I got to Fort Bragg, and I went to the bank and I asked them to give me a loan to buy a house. And they told me no. And that really, really bothered me. It really bothered me. I got depressed, and I told my platoon sergeant, and my platoon sergeant said, "Did you ask them why they told you no?" And once I went back to the bank, I got the courage up again to go back to the bank, and the bank told me no again. And they sat down and they laid out the paper and they showed me where I was falling short of the reasons why they wouldn't lend me money. So from then on, I just had a passion about buying a house. I say, okay, you're gonna have people do research on the investment, which is the key thing. The most important thing about buying houses is the bank is not going to lend you money if they think you're going to fail. If the house is not at the value that it's supposed to be. So that right there said, okay, this is probably one of the safest investments I can imagine. And in turn, I turn around, I can borrow from that investment. It's pretty much the greatest investment you can ever have is real estate.
And so did you then start to move? Because I know you said you bought the individual stocks. Did you start to just reallocate your investments and say, real estate is going to be my thing, not so much the individual stocks anymore?
No, I do both. I do them all. Because because once you make money from real estate, I have rental property, so I take that money and I turn that money over to investment. I buy stocks and I take the dividends and I recommit that money back into the stock. So in other words, the money goes through a series of investments, and it turns over. And one of my things in my license plate says OPM, other people's money. And what I like about that is all my needs and all my wants are paid for by my investments. And in other words, all my other money is free for more investments. So I just keep building and building on top of investments.
Now that's a great strategy, because especially when we talk financial independence, it's really having something else to basically pay for your lifestyle, which is exactly where you are today. Now, how do you find or kind of depend? So we know on the stock side, you're saying I invest in what I know. What about on the real estate? What's the thought process if somebody's saying I want to get into real estate as well? How do they figure out what makes sense for them?
The first thing I would tell them is don't invest in a property until you invest in one for yourself. Don't buy an investment property until you have a house that you live in, if that makes sense. Um, and I say that because the house you live in is not an investment, per se, because you're putting out money towards that every month. You're not taking any money in. Therefore, it's not an investment. So you learn so much by going through the steps of home ownership, by actually buying a house. Now you understand what to look for. You understand the difference in prices, the difference in location. It gives you a better knowledge of your city once you buy that first home. And now you're ready to buy investment properties.
Oh, that's a good thought. And just the step by step pieces. Now, you are buying and holding. Have you ever done any of kind of the house flipping? I know that's popular for a number of people.
I have not, as of yet, done the flipping. I have done um, uh, buy to own, rent to own. I have done a couple of those, which was really good. And the way I did that was I didn't have any money at the time. Well, I didn't have enough money to outright buy the house. And I just did a contract and I turned around and lease optioned the house to another person that within 2 years bought the house. And I
Mhm.
walked away from the table with, a few $1,000.
Now, walk us through that deal a little bit more, because especially I know some people are saying, I want to get into real estate. Maybe they want to do something a little more unconventional simply because they don't have enough assets built up today. So, walk us through that a little bit more. If someone says, well, goodness, I don't have enough to, they bought their primary home and now the coffers are pretty empty. What could be their next step into maybe using that as a way to enter into real estate?
You find someone that trusts you or that understand lease option, and you talk to them and you tell them, look, I'm going to make your mortgage payments. I'm going to make the tax payments and everything on this house. I'm going to do all the maintenance on this house after 6 months. And all I want to do is lease option the house. So I would lease the house for 1 year. And after 1 year, you give me that option for 5 more years. That way I can get someone in there. They can rent it. They will be paying the mortgage and hopefully a little bit more. And then you turn around and get them prepared to buy the house. So you set them up with a bank, you help them with their credit. You have to have a motivated buyer for this concept to work. You have to, when they come to the table, they have to come to the table with at least 10% of the down payment. So you can show the bank that this person is motivated and that they're trying to own a home.
Oh, I think that's big. One, it's doing something good. So I know a lot of people are saying, goodness, I don't want to kick people out of their homes. But if you can find a way to really make it work for the seller who may be having whatever type of financial issues, but also helping someone accomplish their dream of being a homeowner as well. So it gives you a chance to make some money while doing good. So that's always a nice feeling.
It is. It is. And it works well if you're renting. If the person's renting right now, go to the owner of the house that's renting the house to you and ask them, are you willing to do a lease option? If you've been a good tenant and you have something to put down, most likely they would say yes.
Oh, see, that's a good thought. And I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that when they talk about, do I need to put 20% down for a rental property today? Or rates are going up, which makes it a little less advantageous to move on to some of these higher price homes. If it's an option just to kind of step in for someone else, that's a great option there. Now, in terms of resources, so if someone says, I want to do that, is that something where they need like an attorney? They just talk to their realtor? What are some people that they need to pull in to make sure that this will be successful?
Well, it's always good to talk to an attorney. My daughter would tell you that. uh, yes, I would talk to an attorney. I would research. I would talk to a banker. Be the first step that I would take before I would lease option with anyone. And I would make sure I would talk to a realtor to make sure that the value of this house is what they're offering. So you have to be educated. You can't walk into it blindly. Not everyone is as honest as I
But to make sure that they know, one, who to pull in on their team. I think sometimes, you're walking through things and you say, goodness, I'm just going to talk to a realtor, but there are other people that should be on the team walking you through that process too. So
am. Yes.
part of the
Yes.
process might just be assembling your team before you actually jump out there and start finding these deals and negotiating them and so forth.
Yes. That's very important. The more people you talk to, the more knowledge you gain.
Now, when you think back over your time period, you talked about some people that you've worked with, some people that were your clients. Who do you think maybe had the biggest influence of providing you some information about how to become financially independent? Who was that person? Was it the slave comment at first? Was it someone else who said, hey, this is another avenue to go in? Who do you think was probably the most influential in your journey?
I think my aunt Doris, because I watched her, and I noticed that she was never deeply in debt at any time. She always had a strategy of what to do with her money. and she always talked about how she was going to take the next step. And another person that I watched was Craig Allen. Craig Allen is he lives in James City, and he worked down to the base, Cherry Point, and he would always do extra things, and he would say things to me. I used to take his bus. He worked down Cherry Point, and he drove the bus to Cherry Point to make extra money. So I used to ride the bus, and I asked him one day. I say, Craig, you got this great GS job. Why are you driving a bus? And he explained it to me. He explained it to me about the extra money and what he could do with the extra money and how he could reinvest it. And then he took the money from the bus and he bought another bus. And if you look at Craig today, he's probably one of the most successful people in James City. So you have to be willing to watch people, and you have to be willing to ask them the question, how did you do it? What made you do this? What made you invest in this? What made you so financially successful?
I think that's a really big one, just kind of stepping out and asking questions and accumulating research that way. Sometimes we think we just need to find all the information in a book or we need to learn it all on our own, but definitely reaching out and looking. Now, you had your aunt. When you think about your upbringing, probably, she's the most influential in terms of your upbringing and that vision that she provided for you. When you think about how you're raising your children, how do you think that differs from how you were raised and that connection to money?
The way I raised my kids, I remember one trip. I hope this answers your question. I took them out on a Sunday afternoon and we drove around Fayetteville and we went to different neighborhoods. And of course, we went to a well-to-do neighborhood. You know, the houses was really expensive. The yards was really nice. Everything was trimmed. And one of them asked me, "Well, what do these people do?" And I didn't have an answer for them because I didn't know what they did. But I knew that they had a vision. In order to live in this type of neighborhood, to drive these type of cars, you have to have some kind of vision. And it all starts with that vision. So I talk to them and I always ask them, so what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? How are you going to get there? You can't just tell me I'm going to be a lawyer. You got to explain to me step by step how you're going to get there. And they all had their plans and they could tell you exactly how they were going to accomplish their mission, how they were going to be successful, both in their careers and in their finances.
I think that's great because we talk about one of our goals here is to make sure that people have some type of vision of what financial independence looks like for them. Looks different for a number of different people, but sometimes it's hard to see it. If you're buried in debt, if you're at a disadvantage, if you're saying, goodness gracious, every time I get close, something knocks me back down, maybe your vision is blocked. And so, one, starting there because that just allows you to move forward with, okay, what's the next steps? And then, like you said, how to get help.
And one of the things that I will share with you is the greatest motivator in the world is to take pictures and put on the board and to see those pictures every day. Okay, I took a picture of the house I wanted to live in. I took a picture of the neighborhood I wanted to live in. And that drove me. Every decision that I made was to get to that house. It was to get to that neighborhood. And that's how it has to be because every decision propels you down a different path to financial success. If you step off that path, like the thing on TV, you go in a different direction. You have to have something to motivate you to stay there. Either you have to have people around you, you have to have a vision board, or you have something to motivate you every day in every decision.
Now, too, I know you talked about, and we did vision boards not too long ago. So, ladies, if you don't remember, go back.
That's
Talk
great.
a little bit about like what that looks like for you. So that's the year of your finances, your health, your relationships, just all of those things in terms of mental health and so forth. We always have these great visions, and I always say, you see people on social media, they seem like they got it all together. They're running in the morning and meal prepping. They're headed out on vacations and all these kind of things. And so really to figure out how to put that in perspective for you, because it doesn't make sense for you for to have everything that they have. So that just might not be your thing, but to take some time and figure out, and like you said, visualize it. So if it's that big house, if it's the farm, if it's a tiny house or an RV, whatever that is, but come up with a way to make it the first thing that you see or the continuous thing that you see on your journey. I think that's a really good point. So go back and look at that, ladies, if you
Yes.
can.
And I always told my kids, I always ask them the question, how does an ant eat an elephant? They eat the elephant one bite at a time. And if you walk through if you walk through the Sahara, you'll see an elephant all dawn. And ants have eaten it all, one bite at a time.
Now, if that ain't some dad advice, I don't know what. Now, I have one question, and we talked about this. I think last week we talked a little bit about behavioral finance. And one thing about it is people can be raised in the same household and they can have kind of they have the same parents, the same experiences, but they receive it differently. Tell us a little bit when you go, you know where
You're
I'm
gonna
going.
get me in trouble on this.
Tell us a little bit about kind of the differences of how your lessons have been received.
I have three wonderful daughters. Two of them received the message and took the game plan and they just ran with it. They are, you know, they called me, and they can recite the plan to me, uh, and they're doing well. The youngest one, my baby, it's a constant struggle. She understands. She's very brilliant. She understands everything that I have said. She's got the concept down pat. She can tell the world the same thing that I'm telling you. But when her emotions get involved, I think she veers off the path. I think that she can explain to anyone why she spent money here when she needs to spend money here, or she needs to invest it or save it. In her head, that's the right thing to do. But on paper, it's dead wrong. Did I keep that clean?
Clean enough. Now, that definitely, because we all know, I mean, if you have siblings and if you're an only child, you probably will understand. If you have siblings, you're like, we were raised in the same house, and for whatever reason, some of the lessons you received, they didn't. But as you're thinking about maybe some of the parents, they're watching this and they're saying, I want to instill values and goals and dreams and focus and so forth on my children that maybe they didn't have or they don't even have today. What are some of the ways to really pass that message on so it's best received?
What they see is what they do for the most part. If they see you investing, buying, and you're able to do things that the rest of your family are not able to do, they buy into it. If you sit them down at the kitchen table when you do the bills and it's a family thing, it's important to them. They buy in. You can't just talk about it. You have to show them. You have to show them the numbers. You have to allow them to step into your world. Whether your world is we're barely getting by, or we're doing well. You have to allow them to see how you affected financially, because that's the only way they grow. If you shield them from it, the good or the bad, then they have to go out and experience it on their own when they become grown. You have to sit them down to the table every month. You do the spreadsheet. You let them see this is why you can't have that bicycle. This is why you can't buy that dress. These are the things that we're trying to do so that you will have money, so that you can have some of the things that I didn't have.
I think that's
That is the lesson
and
that
invite
I
them in.
did well.
But nobody that's, I mean, because especially I think as parents, sometimes it's hard to say no. But if children knew the why behind the no, I'm, paying for clothes because I had to pay for shoes for you to play football. I can't necessarily pay for the PlayStation or whatever that might be. Then everyone's on the same path. And like you said, that vision. So we all want a house. We all want a yard to play in. We all want to go to Disney World, like whatever it might be. Put that into perspective, that kind of thing.
Yes, yes. And I think the more I showed them, the more time I spent with them, the more they appreciate it. Because my daughter, she said something when she graduated from college, when she graduated from law school, that really broke me down. She said, my dad, mother, and father gave me a lot, but the most important thing that they gave me were their time. And and I it was amazing. She moved me to tears because she understood the value of my time.
And I think that's big too, because I mean, so many parents are thinking about maybe they don't have the time because they got to make the money. And so when you're thinking about that vision or your why in terms of financial independence, it might simply be so you have time. And so sometimes that's harder when people are like, well, I don't know if I want to buy a house. I don't know this. I don't know what to put in terms of that vision board. It might simply be time. And it's a very valuable asset, more valuable than real estate or stocks and bonds and so forth. But so many of us just can't afford it. And that's is huge in terms of value. And like you said, despite having whatever else that you were able to give, it's probably the bigger thing that was most impactful throughout your children's upbringing.
I think a lot of people need to start looking at before they purchase something. They need to look at how much time will it take me to purchase this. When I say time, if you make $100 an hour and this thing costs 100,000, so you have to say, okay, this is what I'm giving up to purchase this. And when you start looking at it in that view, you start becoming more conscious of your purchase decisions.
And that's definitely a good way to look at things. Now, I have a question. So we understand kind of from the children perspective, and I'm quite sure your aunt can probably share a few of these stories as well. So when you become the family member who quote unquote made it, how do you deal with maybe expectations or demands from family members that may not have gotten the plan or executed the plan?
that hasn't happened so much to me. My family is a very proud family. My brothers and sister, I'm number 7 of 8, and they have never asked me for anything. It's amazing. They have never asked me whether they needed it or not. It may be. I think I'm approachable, uh, but I don't think their pride allowed them to ask me, for help. And the sad thing about it is they never asked me for advice. That's the really sad thing, because I have reached out to several of them and tried to explain to them how to do some of the things that I do. And their pride won't allow them to sit down with me and talk with me and allow me to help them.
Oh, I think that's really big. Now, that kind of makes me think about something too. So we pick up information. We're like, goodness gracious, I didn't learn this growing up. I didn't learn this in school. So now I've picked up some information. So I've picked up how to invest in the market, how to start investing. And now you want your family to enjoy the fruits of your educational labor. How do you, if they won't ask you, how do you maybe impart some of that wisdom on them even if they're not searching for it?
You have to be very careful. And everything that's given to you is not necessarily given to the person that's raised in the same house. It may not even be for the person that's sleeping in the same bed with you, because what you're giving is only given to you. And I think it was Steve Harvey that said on the radio, you need to stop trying to help people that's swimming away from the boat. You want to help the people. You want to find someone that you can help. Everybody wants to find someone. My I think my mission is just to help one person. I say if I can help just one person, that means I'm successful. But you have to want that person have to want your help. That person has to come to you. You make it available to them. You make it known that you have advice that you can give them that will help them. But in order for them to get that help, they have to ask you. They have to, and it's hard. It's hard. It's hard watching people you love struggle. It is terrifying. But you have to sit back and you have to let them come to the understanding themselves that they have a problem. And once they come to that understanding that they have a problem and you can help them and they reach out to you, you give them all you can give them.
That's a really good point to make. I think sometimes we're forcing people. We're talking about my mom doesn't, my cousins don't, whatever it is. Listen, I'm trying to help you.
Yes, I want to help so many people in my family. I just want to stand outside and just yell and tell everybody I can tell. But they have to be open and they have to be willing to accept your help.
Now that's a good thing because you talked about you getting information, you kind of seeing the world and seeing different people that you were able to pick up information and experience from. And one of the great things is that gave your children a leg up that you didn't have. Now, when you think about, and anybody who definitely, if you've talked to me or heard me, especially, I talk a lot about estate planning and how direly important it is. And I share my story. I won't go into it today, but in terms of the why it is so important, tell us a little bit about what you've done to make sure that the next generation and the next generation will have a better opportunity versus what you had based on what you're doing today.
It's not about me. I think that's so important that we as young people or people have to understand that it's not necessarily about you after you get to a certain stage of your life. It's about the people that comes after you. And you ask yourself, why do every generation have to start at zero? Just because I started at zero, just because I had holes in my shoes, don't mean the next generation has to walk around with holes in their shoes. The next generation can start at another level. That next level can be having a 4 year degree, having a master's degree, having a doctorate, starting off with several real estate properties, starting off with stocks, starting off with money in the bank that was passed down to them. It something about generational wealth that's so important that you have to start saying, just because I was a poor child, my daughter don't have to grow up to be poor. She don't have to understand what the struggle of being poor is like. It's not necessary. It's not necessary for her to have to go to the tobacco field. She would never see a tobacco field. It's not necessary for her to have 2 or 3 part-time jobs, because I have paved the way. I have done things and I'm going to pass it on to them, where they, will, it may happen that they don't take care of it. It may happen. Some people say that, but they understand how to get it back. Once you have it, you gain such a knowledge of how to gain it back.
Oh, I love that. That's big too. So that means if you've learned it and made a mistake, it's
That
not always
exactly.
a loss.
We all gonna make mistakes. I still make them. I still make them. You're gonna make mistakes. It's not. Yes, I still buy stocks that fail. I lose money on stock. I lost money today. but Friday I made money. But you look at that stock, you reevaluate that stock, and you go from there. You don't keep looking in the rearview mirror. You can't drive looking in the rearview mirror. You're gonna make mistakes. You learn from your mistakes, and you do better. And you do better.
I think that's a really good one. And you talked about sharing what you've learned. And so I know you have created a YouTube channel called My Finance Dad. Tell us a little bit about one, the motivation, and two, what people can expect to get from watching you over on your channel.
My daughter, my daughters have gotten tired of me preaching about finances. And they tired of me talking about, one day I'm going to talk to people about finance. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So my youngest daughter finally said, okay, we're going to set up the camera and you're going to do it. And it scared me to death, but I'm so happy that I did it. My finance dad is just trying to reach that individual that needs something, some small nugget, some small, motivation to make them understand that they can be financially successful also. And it doesn't take a lot. The last video I did, we talked about the 10%, taking that first 10%, putting it away, saving it, investing. Not everybody can do that. I understand that. You can't do that. Everybody can't do it. They got bills, they got obligations, but you can take something. If that something is $1, you take that $1 and you hold on to it for dear life. And the next week you add another dollar to it. And soon you'll have something. You'll have a pile of dollars. And that dollar can grow. You take that dollar and you go invest it in a pressure washer so you can wash cars. And from there it grows more dollars. When you have money, the wonderful thing about having money is once you have it, more money is coming. More money wants to come to your pocket. More money wants to come to you. Money attracts money. The greatest thing I ever read was this poem about money. And it talked about how money never gets sick. Money never takes a vacation. Money never calls in. Money never says no. All money wants is a good master. That's all it wants. Someone to control it, someone to put it here and grow.
Oh, I love it. And one of the things too is depending on where you are and depending on where you are in your life, you may not have someone to really guide you and say what next. So maybe that last generation, they were just getting by. And so they were in survival mode. They couldn't necessarily plan and look at thriving mode. So my finance dad is a great channel to check out and
Thank you so much.
so forth along the way. And we're happy that you shared your journey and kind of your guidance in terms of what you're sharing with your daughters, the next generation, whoever will listen. Because it's really important, one, for us to see more examples of people who made it. And so it's always great to highlight and say it's possible, regardless of where you've started. So definitely happy to hear your story. As we get ready to close up, are there any kind of closing thoughts, any kind of dad guidance that you can give to everybody as they say, what am I going to do tomorrow? What next?
When you set up your vision board and you start adding goals to them, make sure every day you get up, you do something towards that goal. If it's just one thing, if all I do is like when I was buying rental properties, every day I had to go out and I had to look at 10 houses. Or I had to pick up the phone and I had to call 10 people. Or I had to pick up the phone and I had to call 10 banks. I had to do something towards my goals every day. That's the only way I could look at that vision board. Every day I had to do something towards my vision, towards my goals. It wasn't enough to look at those pictures and to say I want that house in that community. Or I want to have this much money in the bank. I had to do something towards something positive.
I think that's a good point. And if you haven't done your something today, make sure that you subscribe to your Wealth Guidance YouTube channel and the My Finance Dad YouTube channel. So that'll be your two things to do today to get you to your goals. I want to thank you so much, Mr. Clark, for joining us, for imparting your wisdom and really sharing your story. It lets us know that it is possible. And then hopefully one day we'll be sitting pretty and we'll be able to say, hey, I'm sitting down and somebody else's money is paying for my lifestyle.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And make sure you join us again next week for another Great Money Monday. I can't wait to see you. And so until then, have a great night.